Welcome everybody, we've got a very exciting video and a lot to get into, so make sure you give the video a like if you're excited. We have two brand new formats coming to Disney Lorcana, Triple Deck Constructed and Super Sealed. We will be breaking down all the maths on these formats, talking about my opinions on them, but importantly, the opinions of pro Disney Lorcana players, because we will be hearing from 3 pro players in this video that have qualified for the World Championships, because these formats will be replacing Core Constructed for the World Champs. Wow. There's some very exciting things about that, but there's also some potential dangers about that, which we're all going to get into that later. Thank you to Card Market for sponsoring the video. It's the biggest place in Europe to buy singles online. Thanks, Card Market. All right, so what are the two formats? Super Sealed, and we don't know the exact format for Worlds, but it's fair to assume with it being a 2-day event that Super Sealed will be day 1, and day 2 is going to be Triple Deck Constructed. It's going to be something like that. We don't have the finer details, but that's a fair assumption. And first and foremost, no Core Constructed at all at Worlds is surprising, but honestly, I'm down for it. The more I think about it, the more I like it. If ever there is an opportunity to have and showcase different formats at a competitive level for Disney Lorcana, it is the World Championships. And we know that these players are all great at Core Constructed because they won the challenges, but you're not just rewarding and not just looking for the best Core Constructed player, you are now looking for the best Disney Lorcana player, and that is across formats. That's going to be Core Constructed because that's how they qualified for this event, Sealed, and Triple Deck Constructed. So that's awesome. Where do my concerns come in? It's mainly with the Super Sealed. So let's start there. For what it's worth, I am so excited for Triple Deck Constructed. I can't wait to talk about it more. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. It's something that I've thought about a lot for Lorcana, and I can't wait to see it. It is going to be, oh my goodness, so amazing. But Super Sealed is 16 packs, from 4 different sets, and you are going to build a 50 card deck across 3 ink colors. Now, it essentially has a sideboard as well. So let's say it's a best of 3, which I think it's fair to assume, because between games in the match, that's how a sideboard works. I've been playing some other trading card games recently, experiencing sideboards. The way a sideboard works is that you're going to have your base deck of 50 cards, and then after game 1, you can then sideboard cards in. So, and then at the start of game 1 of your next match, you have to go back to your original 50. So in game 2 and game 3, you're going to have access to your sideboard, but then in game 1, you've got that initial 50. That's how sideboards work, and that's how it's working here. We did also see a leak a few weeks ago with the word sideboard used on the Ravensburger Play Hub, and this explains why, I guess. So what are the numbers? Well, if you're opening 16 packs, you're going to have a total of 192 cards, because you've got 16 by 12 cards in a pack. Now, you don't have a guaranteed number of each ink, but it's going to be roughly 32. The first 6 cards of a pack you get in Disney Lorcana are always one of each ink color. There's something you might not have known. But then in the later parts of the pack, there's no guarantee. You know, you might just get 1 Sapphire card and 2 Ruby cards, for example. And I actually just opened a pack to check that, and that's exactly what happened. I got like a foil card at the back, giving me 3 Ruby cards, and I only had 1 Sapphire card. So you're not guaranteed to have 32 of each, but it's going to be that sort of ballpark. So therefore, once you decide what 3 ink colors you're playing, your 192 cards are going to be down to 96 cards across the 3 ink colors, and that's going to be your whole deck, like your main deck and your sideboard. But you then have to pick what is your 50 card deck, which means you're going to have like a 46 card sideboard, which is honestly absurd. That is a lot, but I'm all here for it. So my initial reaction to Super Sealed being part of the Lorcana World Championships was, what, are you kidding me? Are you joking? That sounds terrible. But my concerns come from, and I think I've changed my mind on that, by the way, when I've crunched the numbers. My concern for it is the randomness involved, right? You're going to have some people that high roll, you're going to have some people that low roll. Like, I imagine with this many cards, though, with this many packs, 16, there should be enough that it's not going to be a complete disaster where some people just high roll and some people massively low roll. It's possible, of course it is. That kind of comes with the territory. My concern about the format is the randomness involved in opening the packs. But with the fact you're having 196 and you're turning that into a 50 card deck, and you're limited to 3 ink colors, that's interesting. I mean, it's also worth mentioning with these packs that Arcasia's Island and Reign of Jafar do have dual ink cards and the rest won't. So I'll tell you my strategy right out the gate. I've played sealed a fair bit, and without doubt the strategy is put everything into different ink colors as you're opening them. Look at the dual ink cards. What are the dual ink cards? If you've got a few like really good ones, that might sway you, right? Because a dual ink card is taking up 2 out of 3 of your options. So those, I would start by opening the Reign of Jafar cards and the Arcasia's Island cards, because those can be the dual links. See, I'm already strategizing. There's a lot of strategy here. That is the strategy, without a shadow of a doubt. That is how everyone will do it. I can guarantee you that. Especially now I've shared it with everyone. I'm sure they'd work it out themselves. But you start off with the dual link cards, because that might steer you in a bit of a direction early on. If you get like 5 Ruby Amethyst dual link cards, which are all great, or 5 Amber Emerald cards, which are all great, that's going to steer you in a certain direction, right? So I actually think it's pretty fascinating. I do have concerns about the randomness involved in a sealed format. Now, having spoken to some pro players, DKP in particular raised some good points about Super Sealed, about it being part of Worlds, which are a concern, which is that he said testing sealed is really horrendous in Disney Lorcana. There are no official tools, and in brackets, no unofficial tools for that matter. So his point is, how on earth am I supposed to test this? How on earth am I supposed to practice for this? Am I just supposed to buy loads of product and just endlessly spend money on pack? I mean, maybe. Honestly, maybe that's what you're going to have to do. But you can understand where his concern comes from there. He said that sealed is skillful, but he thinks it's maybe a bit too sudden to be springing on them. There's no sealed competitive format, whereas in Magic you had draft in Pro Tours. So he's not in love with sealed, and I can understand why. I think when I heard about sealed, I also was pretty unsure about it. The more I've thought about it, the more I honestly kind of like it. I think the fact that it's 192 cards turned into 50 means that there should be some randomness avoid, but I certainly can understand his concern about not having a good way to test this. I mean, another thing that's worth bearing in mind is players that have only played Disney Lorcana might be at a disadvantage from players that have played games like Magic the Gathering, where sealed formats and things like that have existed for longer times. You're going to have a lot of players at Worlds that have never played sealed before. They do have a month to prepare. I think it should be fine. I think it's enough time. But that was DKP's thoughts. And then what Ed said, Ed is the Disney Lorcana North American champion and also won a challenge. He said he was never really a big fan of sealed, as it felt like it was a low resource, non-interactive format. Not a lot of draw or removal makes it feel like more of a race. So yeah, I can agree with both of them. What I will say, most of the time you play sealed format, you have significantly less cards. And hopefully this extra addition of cards that you're playing, as well as the deck building restriction, I think it does create a lot of skill, while there's also a lot of randomness. My experience with sealed format at a high level is there is a lot of doing nothing, like just standstill type boards where I've got a bunch of ready characters, you've got a bunch of ready characters. The games play out very differently, but I'm also really excited to see that at a very high level. So overall, super sealed, I had some strong initial concerns, very big. I'm honestly glad I didn't post this video immediately, because my initial reaction was going to be, what are you thinking? But the more I've looked at it, the more I like it. I still have concerns, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be exciting to watch as a viewer. And hopefully this has been play tested enough where the devs don't think that there's like, you know, going to be an absolute ton of randomness. And there will be. It's inevitable. Some people are going to high roll, some people aren't. That's the part I don't like about it, but it is a card game. At the end of the day, that can happen anyway with the way that you draw cards. However, the next part, oh my goodness, everybody. I'm so excited for this. I am so excited for this. This, for me, is the absolute pinnacle of Disney Lorcana, triple deck constructed. So this is a format which I am very familiar with from my background in digital card games. From Gwent, which was the game that I started playing, and I used to be a caster and analyst for their World Championship events, That is the format that you play in Gwent. It's digital, so it's very different. You don't need 3 physical decks to carry around with you at all time. The barrier to entry getting 3 decks in a digital card game is significantly lower than getting 3 decks in a physical card game. So Triple Deck Constructed is not a format which is suitable to be using it for set championships or challenge events, because the barrier to entry is simply too high. But at an invite-only World Championships event, it is so exciting. The way it works is that you're going to build 3 decks and you have each ink color represented, which is the perfect way to do it. I have to say, like, the decisions on the formats, like this 3 decks, each ink represented, and this with 3 inks restricted and a sideboard, I love it. Absolutely brilliant. The game designers for this game are outstanding. I have to say it, and they continue to impress me. I really, really am impressed. Now, you don't play with all 3 of your decks, because before the game starts, you're going to see what decks your opponent's playing. Now, it seems at the World Championships, it's going to be open deck lists, so you actually see every card. At your locals, if you wanted to do this, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. You could just see what ink color pairings they're playing, right? So they're going to have some tokens which say, okay, Amber Emerald, Sapphire Steel, Ruby Amethyst. Those are my 3 decks. I see your 3 decks. Then you're going to simultaneously ban one of those. Now, we're calling it benching here. It's been known in every other game I've played as banning, but there we are. Benching is the terminology we're using. So suddenly, instead of playing with all 3 of our decks in a best of 5, we're going to play with 2 of our decks in a best of 3. But the twist is that you have to win with both, and that is crucial. So if we play game 1, you win, all right, but I lost. You then can only play your last remaining deck, whereas I've still got both of my decks to play. And after game 1, the player that has lost has the option to switch their deck out, and they have the option to see who goes first. That's really important, because if you lose game 1 in this style of format, you are going to have the choice. You've got both of your decks remaining, and your opponent's got their 1 deck remaining. You will have the choice on which side of the coin you play. It's interesting. There's a lot of different dynamics going in this one. It's a very deep format, and the whole benching system is fascinating, because there's so many different ways that you can approach this kind of format. You could build a lineup which hard targets a specific ink color. Let's say you think that every single player in the format is going to bring some sort of discard deck. You could then build a lineup where all 3 of your decks are insane against discard. If you think that one player or every player is going to have a Ruby Sapphire deck, you could build a deck like a lineup which hard counters Ruby Sapphire. All of your decks are going to beat it. On the flip side, you might decide that you don't want to play against any Ruby players, and no matter what you're going to play against, you're going to ban Ruby or you're going to ban Steel. Whatever it might be, there is a huge amount of strategy involved. Now, why do I think this is a better format competitively than a core constructed? Well, it's got a higher barrier to entry, so again, I don't think that this should be ever done at a challenge, but the World Championships is the perfect place. If you think about core constructed, what is the biggest bit of randomness? And it's the matchup, right? If I'm playing Ruby Sapphire and I just queue into endless aggro decks all day, I'm going to be really unlucky, right? Whereas in a core constructed or a triple deck constructed, there's strategy involved where you can ban one of your opponent's deck. You have to build a different lineup. You have to be flexible. It requires you to be able to play lots of different decks and not just be good at one. It is a great, great, great idea. One thing I find interesting is that for the final, there won't be any benching or banning. You're going to play with all 3 decks. I don't know that I personally love that idea. It's interesting. I don't hate it. I just think, like, if I was competing, I would be looking at doing some sort of strategic lineup where I'm planning on banning a certain color every time, perhaps. And then if I've got a really cool system in place like that, but then I get to the final and there's no banning involved, my strategy might break down. That is my one concern, that there's like a second format within the format, right? So there's almost 3 formats for Worlds, right? In a way, you've got Super Sealed, you've got triple deck constructed best of 3, and then you've got triple deck constructed best of 5 for the final, which is vastly different to being able to ban one of your opponent's deck. That's like one little thing I'm a bit unsure on, if I'm honest. Hopefully it doesn't lead to an anticlimactic final. I guess with the players knowing that that's part of it, you have to bear that in mind with your strategy. But I don't know if I really love that dynamic, but there we are. Having said that, do you know what would be cool? If the whole thing was best of 5 as well, right? If we got to see more best of 5. It is Worlds after all. Best of 3s have a lot of randomness compared to a best of 5 with the die rolls and who goes first and second. So I love the sound of best of 5s. Honestly, at Worlds, I would like to have seen best of 5s across the board. So I don't know. There's advantages, disadvantages, everything. Overall, I do like it. I do like it. Now, let's talk about what Ed and DKP said about the triple deck constructed, and then hear from Sailor as well. So Ed said, it's kind of like core constructed in a way, but it definitely has its own meta. Yep. He says he suspects that certain colors will be permanently banned, as there are tons of decks that are only weak to a certain color, and that if that deck isn't playable, they will be favored. And then DKP said this format is really skillful. Sailor gave me his opinion overall on the formats and says he likes it. It's very demanding of us, and it will put us to test like we never were before, which is really awesome. I'm excited for it too. I'm excited to be watching it. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, I'm excited to play some of these formats as well in the lead up to the event. Again, I'm a little bit concerned about Super Sealed with the randomness involved with the packs, and I'm a little bit unsure about the grand final being a slightly different format to the rest of it. I think it's fine, and I think there's enough packs here for there not to be too much randomness, and actually a huge skill ceiling in this. So I like it. That's my final conclusion. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. When I went to record this video, I thought I was going to moan about Super Sealed, but I spent like an hour speaking to people, researching it, crunching some numbers. I think it might work, and it's going to be interesting to watch. I have a feeling that Super Sealed gameplay might prove to be a little bit stale, with lots of stalemate type gameplay with not questing, just leaving your characters ready. But that's also interesting to see Lorcana played in a different way. It absolutely is. And the triple deck constructed is something from straight out of my dreams. I never thought we'd see it in Disney Lorcana. It's something I've always wanted to see. I floated the idea around of actually running a format like this as a video idea. I spoke to Moyen at some point about us having a little show match this way. It never ended up happening, but now we've got all the more reason to do it. I would love to compete at events like this. I would love to cast events like this. It's going to be so much fun, and I'm really excited to watch it. Of course, I'll be doing a watch party for the World Championships. You can be sure of that. I am really excited for it. What I'll also say, if there's any pro players watching this and they are interested in getting me involved in helping them prepare for this tournament, since I'm not casting, I am very much available to be involved in a prep team. I would only want to work with one player, and I would want it to be super secret, but I think I've got a lot to offer in a prep, particularly for these wacky deck building formats. Deck building's always been my strength. For the first ever Gwent World Championships, I helped my friend Freddie prep for that event, and he finished second, which was awesome. And I've missed that. I miss being involved in that side of things. As much as I love to compete, it's really the deck building and the tournament prep that gets me particularly passionate about these kinds of tournaments. So if there's someone watching this that's at Worlds and they'd like me on their team, let me know. I would definitely be interested in contributing. I think particularly when it comes to this format, triple deck constructed, I've got a lot of experience creating lineups for tournaments like that. And the Super Sealed, that is going to be very, very fascinating to see how people are practicing for that. Definitely some concerns, but overall, a lot of excitement, I have to say. I'm up for it. Let me know what you think, because it is a bit controversial, but the more I think about it, the more I like it. So fair play to Ravensburger for being bold. Hopefully they can provide a nice way for the players to test this Super Sealed format, because it's not going to be easy to prep for, but that is part of the fun, isn't it? It's World Championships. It shouldn't be easy. So thanks for watching, and see you soon.